Hello, everybody. It is, let's see, today is December 9th, 2024. It is 6:02 p.m. My name is Sarah Bryden. I am the chair of the Finance, Operations, and Personnel Committee for the Portland, Maine Board of Education. Welcome to this meeting of that committee. So with us, we have a number of folks. I'm going to make quick introductions. Let's see. So we have members of the committee, myself, we have board member Opperman, who's a member of this committee. We have board member Maya Lena, who's a member of this committee. We also have with us, not a member of the committee, but board chair Sarah Lentz. And then for staff with us, let's see, we have Jennifer Slabank, who is the executive director of human resources. We have Helene DeBartolomeo, who is the senior executive director of finance and operations. Let's see, we have committee member, board member Noor, who just joined us as well. And then going back to staff, we have Tamara Sweeney, who is the director of facilities management and maintenance services. And then we also have Scott Watson, who, Tamara, he's on your team, correct?
Yes, he's my assistant director. Yes.
Super wonderful. The one I didn't get to look up before we started, so I apologize for that. And then we have Sarah Warren, who is the senior executive director of strategy. And I believe as the tiles have been adding, I think I've caught everybody. So let's see. So before we move into our agenda, I'm going to take a quick check to see if we have anybody perhaps from the public who has joined and might want to give public comment. If we do, then I will spend a moment reminding folks of our policies that govern public comment. However, I'm seeing nobody on the attendee list, so nobody's going to be giving public comment because there's nobody there who might choose to do so. So I am now closing public comment, and we are going to move in to our agenda. So we are going to talk about a number of really great, exciting things. We're going to go over monthly financials as we do in this committee regularly. We're going to preview CIP, which is the Capital Improvements Plan. We're going to talk about that. We are going to have a discussion about audit findings and a quick discussion of in our previous committee meeting, committee members talked about a few things that that each of us would like to know a little bit more about as we move into the full budget process for fiscal year 26. So we're going to get a little bit of an update on that. So I am going to turn it over to staff to move us through this agenda. It looks like Superintendent Scallon is not able to join us yet. But are we starting with the monthly financials?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. And Ryan said he'll pop on as soon as he can.
Great. Thank you.
So like you said, today we're going to have a discussion a little bit about getting another quick update about where we are in finance, and then go through our monthly financials. And then after we're done with our financials, I'll let Tamara take over, Tamara and Scott over on the capital improvement plan. So I just want to kind of give a update on what's going on with the audit right now. I know that last time we met, I had let everybody know that we were planning on having the auditors here. The auditors were on site from December 2nd through the 6th. And I wanted to kind of go over what audit findings we had last year and what that means for us coming into the FY24 audit, just so that there's no surprises when we get our findings that come in. So what I provided to you were the findings that we received last year for our FY23. One of them had to do with the way our internal control structure worked. If you remember correctly, the auditors had a huge concern about the access that the payroll department had versus what the HR department had, and that happened. So what happened is that was for FY23. That would have been through June 30th of 2023. We went to ADP on January 1 of 2024. So because the FY24 audit includes a portion of us still being in our old system with our old internal control structure. I did speak to the city auditor, and she said that we would see this finding still happen because it's 6 months out of FY24 still included us being in our old system. They were confident about like the changes that have occurred. They went through our system. We showed them the controls that were in place for our payroll specialist versus our HR generalist versus our supervisors, like our directors and our principals who do the approval of the timesheet. They got to see all that structure and saw that we have a good control in place at this time, but because half the year was still in the old system, we will see this finding still come up again. The second piece of the second finding that we had was there were some audit recommendations that they asked us to move forward with. The first one was the review of the purchase card transaction process. This was something I was trying to get our purchasing manager to work on when she came on board with us. But we were really adamant about making sure that with our new budget coming on, that our personnel process was working well with position control, because as you know, ADP does not have position control. So we had to come up with a last minute try to process that could work for everybody so that it was visible for everyone to see, and we felt comfortable that was going to make sure to help manage us. That wasn't too cumbersome. So we had to kind of put that project to the side. Actually with that actual note, I know last time at the last finance committee, I had explained that I still had 2 vacancies in my finance department. One was the purchasing manager and one was the payroll manager. I just had a purchasing manager start today. So I'm really excited about that. So I'm down to now one position that I really need to get on board with us, and that would be the payroll manager. But we're slowly getting in a really good place as far as where we should be as a finance department. The second piece was adopting a cash receipt policy. Again, something that kind of got put aside because we were working with, I was very heavily involved with getting Maine First off the ground in that program and that project, I should say, when we talked about the 3 buckets of what we were dealing with Maine First. So, we felt that managing the Maine First project really was more important right now than the cash receipt policy. Again, these are recommendations from the auditor and not necessarily anything that's going to blow us up in any sort of negative way. The third piece was improve the controls over our student activity accounts. So when we received this finding, I did have Barry Dunn do an audit, a sample auditing of our elementary, middle, and high school. And so they were supposed to work on providing us some recommendations. Again, this was another project that kind of fell behind because we gave the Maine PERS the priority in what we were working on. And then the fourth recommendation was the review of the accrued vacation for excess balances. When we moved to ADP, that was something that I went ahead and worked on. And me, Ryan, HR, and he brought in all of the, worked with all of the union representatives, and we worked on a plan and did the whole communication together as a joint effort. And we got that all cleaned up before our year end. So that one will, I'm pretty confident that one would come off of our finding for FY24 because we were able to fix that before the year end. And then the last audit finding, this was kind of like a joint audit finding with the city, and it had to do with the timing of our cash reconciliations in regards to the bank recs that the city does. And we have since I brought my accounting manager on board, we have been able to speed up that process. And now that we also have a process in place with our payroll and our going from ADP to, this is really about a lot of what we were falling behind in was our process that goes from ADP to the general ledger to convert the data so that the general ledger showed what the cash in and out was for those payroll processes were. It was a little slow at first because we were really working on that crossover between the way the data came out of ADP and moving it to so that it made sense in our financial data. But we have that down now. We're actually to a point, which is also the reason why I'm able to provide you timely monthly financials. That was all hand in hand that went together as far as getting all of that, all that timing in place. So I'm going to kind of pause there. I didn't know if there was any questions in regards to any of the findings, if there was any questions about some.
Yeah, this is yeah, I do have a quick follow-up question, and I'll still be watching for the Zoom hands if anybody else has a question. But I'm wondering if you could. So first of all, thank you. This is great. I appreciate the level of detail on this. That last bullet point about improving the overall city and school cash reconciliation process, I am following what you're saying in terms of like the ability for data to basically like do what it needs to do, and money moves around and the data catches up and things like that. Can you explain maybe the question mark that I have is how that data transfer accounting ADP stuff, the technical term, how that aligns, or like where the city comes in, because my understanding is that ADP is just our payroll and it doesn't have to do with the city. So yeah. What's the city component?
So what ends up happening is when we process payroll, obviously there are multiple cash activity that occur because we process payroll. So we have to pay, the IRS for the withholdings that we take. The ADP actually does a wire to take the amount of cash that is needed to make payroll. They'll have to take funding so that they can make all of those different payments that they do for us. And so we can't show that the cash actually came out of the bank. There's two pieces. There's the bank side, and then you have the financial side. And so ADP, all of the activity that happens in ADP has to be converted so that it can go into our financial data. So then the city can see where the cash is, where all the cash transactions are happening, and match that to the bank statement as they're reviewing it on a monthly basis.
Oh, so in terms of the city and school combined audit.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that explanation. Do we have any other committee or board members who have questions before we move on? Okay, I think we're good to move on.
So I'm going to go ahead and go into the financials. So this again is our financials July through November 30th. So at this point, our collections for revenues should be around 42% to budget if we're looking at if we're at or close to where we should be. As you can see for the general fund, we're pretty close to being on target, as well as some of the other funds are a little bit harder to keep track on a monthly basis. As you can see that right now. When I started last year, if you remember, when I came on board, we saw that there was a lot of grants that didn't have budget on it. So we're slowly trying to create like a little bit more methodology in our process. So that way, moving forward in forward years, we can be able to kind of match where we should be moving forward. But for instance, like the ESSER grant, because that was like a 2-3 year grant, that's kind of going to be based on usage and on the spending that we moved from the general fund over to that grant. So it's kind of not very consistent on the collection, and as well with some of the other grants. I did have I know at the last meeting, Chair Bryden, you had asked for some additional information on what was in that other category, because we had about $327,000 collected. So one of the grants that's in there is called the Maine Learning Technology Initiative. And that was a grant that was designed to offer supplemental tech to support teacher and learning. So we just received some funds this year, but as you can see, we also were receiving funds in the past. And when I look to see what we haven't spent any of that money this year yet, but when I looked at what we spent the money on last year, it was about $135,000. It was used to purchase Chromebooks. And so that's what those funds were used for. Another larger grant that's in that other category was an adult ed innovation grant. It was a Maine College and Career Access Grant, and it was the revenues that we're seeing in this year is some of the roll forward from last year. There's about $81,000 in revenues that we've collected. Because this grant goes through September 30th of the current year. So we're seeing that revenue in there as well. And then the third major grant that was in there was the Refugee Resettlement Grant, which was also another roll forward grant from FY24. That grant went from October of 2023 to September of 2024. Those funds were used to go towards refugees who had needed assistance for rent or food or clothing, things like that. I did take a look at what some of the reporting that we did for it last year. And just to let you know, we reported to the state that we basically assisted 328 refugees through this grant, which is, I think, pretty phenomenal. And the revenues that we've collected so far in this year, because this grant, again, went through September of 24, was about $53,800. So those were the three big ones. There's a couple of small ones. I wasn't going to go after the $7,000 ones, but those were the big major ones that made up this $300,000 revenue collection.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing that research and getting back to us on that. Board member Lena, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just making sure I was following on the spreadsheet, the grants that you were just listing. Okay.
Those were the ones that were listed under other. So Chair Bryden asked me at the last committee meeting to give her some more information, because as you can see, I'm not showing any budget on those, but yet we show collection of about $300,000 in revenue for it. So she had asked me if I could provide her additional detail on what those grants that were making up that amount that we collected.
Thank you.
Board member Opperman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Helene. I was wondering about adult ed revenues versus adult ed grants. Could you clarify that for me, please?
Yeah, so the adult ed department, so up top here, this portion that we have up here in adult ed, that is the portion that is actually tied to us getting funding from property taxes. And then because the adult ed department or school, I should say, wants to be, go and look for more funding on top of that so that they can actually, broaden their program spectrum. And so then that's where this comes in. Down here below, you'll see that I have a line for adult ed grants right now. I'm trying to work with them as well as right now. I'm not showing any budget on their grant side or collection of revenue. And it's because last year, a lot of their grants were their first year grants. And so a lot of what they're working with right now is still a roll forward. So I'm trying to get them to provide me with what was their remaining revenues or their remaining grants from last year that will still continue this year so that I can get it recorded. So we have a better handle on where we are as far as their collection and their usage of their grant funds.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Sure. So I'll go ahead and move over to our expense side. Again, we should be looking at an expense usage of about 42%. As you can see, we're under on our general fund revenue. A lot of that has to do with some of the vacancies that we've been having, or filling the positions with sub positions instead of full-time employee positions. As you can see, adult ed is there on their side. They're about where they should be as far as spending. And then food service is a little bit on the low side as well. I'm just going to say, I'm going to go back one screen. The other piece I wanted to point out is I forgot to mention this, is that food service is a little bit on the low side. I did get in touch with them, and they just recently got all caught up on their revenue. So they have to go in, they have to do a report to the state, explain the meals that they've done on a monthly basis. And I literally just approved tonight, like their September. So it's kind of like almost like a 60-day kind of delay with their process this year, but we'll soon start seeing that be caught up. So I'm not very concerned about that 4% of revenue collection. I just wanted to point that out. But on their food service side too, they're a little bit under, and that's because part of their spending is supposed to be used for, if you remember last year, they had to come up with a spend down plan because they had too much money in their reserve account. And so I know this year now that we have a new food service director, she's been working on trying to push out some of those last minute programs and projects that we were using during the spend down program. One of them was getting a chef in place, which we did over the summer. We got the chef in place. The other one is to get what do you call that? I'm sorry, I'm having a brain, a generator, sorry, a building generator. Sorry about that. And Tamara's been helping. She's been a really huge component in helping us get all that kind of settled down. But that was part of the spend down plan. It was all pre-approved last year to use that funding. So we're finally getting those programs those projects really moving this year. The CTE program, we actually have another grant that's coming forward to bring this in. So, but the CTE program is part of what PATHS uses for their additional funding that they use. The ESSER grant, we're right there, almost finished spending that out. We're not allowed to invoice the next month until the state approves it. And as you remember, Ryan gave an update at the last board meeting. We had submitted our June invoices to them. And so as soon as they give us their approval, we're ready to move July, August, and September through. So we don't have any concern about spending all that funding down as well. And then again, with the other grants, you have your IDEA, that's with our special ed department. We're working closely with Dr. Warren, with Jesse Applegate, and as well as with one of his staff members that he hired to do the Maine care reimbursement. So what we're trying to do is, carefully look at what we have in IDEA and what we had originally budgeted in general fund, and kind of doing a swap out so we can take full advantage of that Maine care reimbursement. So they've been working really hard on getting that done for us. Our pre-K, our CDS reimbursement, they have us on making sure that we bill to within 14 days of the following month. So we're up on track with that. And the Preventing Homelessness, as you remember, last month, we brought that grant forward into this budget process, as well as the private grants. and that the ARPA, the HCY, which stands for Homeless Children and Youth, the one is the roll forward, and then two is the funding we have for this year. And then we're still waiting to see if we're going to get the funding from the REV grant. I'm not quite sure if that's going to come through or not. There was some rumor that we might not get it. So if we don't, then we'll obviously do a budget amendment and remove those revenues and expense budgets if we do. And then our title funds. And again, we're working closely with our director of grants, and she's making sure that we're staying in compliance for ensuring that we spend the money in the right places for our title schools. But overall, our spending still is around 37%. So we're a little bit under where we need to be, which is kind of like a good place to be. And on the next one here, before I guess I take questions, this one's a breakdown, a further breakdown of our general fund only. And as you can see, what's really keeping us down or keeping us below where we should be overall on our spending is really in the personnel piece. As you can see, we're expected to be at 42%, but we're about 34% spending. And because we have approved that very done contract, we're going to see this number go up higher. I haven't really officially moved any of the budget yet because we basically want to wait till we get to the end of the year to see what that final number looks like of where we need to move. But if you remember, about 2 meetings ago, I presented on where we would take the funding, which is where we're looking here, personnel. Due to some of the vacancies that we've had, that we would move to contracted services to make sure that we don't go over budget. But overall, we're still really under budget. Overall, we're in a good place. So there's no concern there with our spending, overall spending in the general fund.
Helene, this is just super. Thank you so much for providing this level of detail. I have a quick question about the debt service line here at 55%. I'm curious if that's a timing thing, like the debt service payments happen. Okay. All right. So it's not like, oh my gosh, we misjudged and it's more than we thought. It's just the way the payments happen over the course of the year.
That's exactly it. So bond payments happen twice a year. They're every 6 months. One bond payment will include a principal and interest payment, and then one is just the interest only. So it's going to look lopsided a little bit, but by the end of the year, we're going to be 100% spent.
Super. Thank you. Board member Lena, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
Thank you. On the previous slide, there was one line item, the ARPHCY is at 121%. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so this was the some ARPA funds we received. HCY stands for the Homeless Children and Youth. There's the one and a two. The one was a grant that was a roll forward from last year. So whatever we didn't spend, we had through September 30th to spend that out. And then the two is this year funding. And so right now, it looks a little lopsided because it says that basically we received $50,000 and we spent $61,000. I need to go in there and do a budget amendment to correct that, so that way it corrects itself. So because if you look here on the revenues again, here's the collection on the revenue side. You'll see it's at about 45,000. So what's going to happen is we have to make sure that that the grant is fully budgeted, and then if it's not, then I will be bringing forward to the finance committee what would be a budget amendment to correct that. And if we are overspent, then we need to basically look at what was spent in there and then determine where that funding needs to be moved to.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the monthly financials? I'm not seeing any, so I think we're good on that. Thank you again, Helene. I appreciate the detail very much.
Absolutely. At this point, then I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Tamara and let her take over.
Hello, everybody. Helene, are you gonna move the slides along for me? Okay, perfect. So we can start out with some of the progress we made in our capital. This is just showing an overview from last year's FY25 column, where we were in each phase of all the projects we had and where we are currently. The new is blank because we're just proposing at this point. As you can see, we made some progress in the design work this year. And in post-construction, we went in a couple of the projects there. I think in board docs, there's a spreadsheet of like real detailed of where we are at every project and phases, but I'll just give a brief overview of some of the projects we completed this summer and in the fall. We completed upgrade of the Deering camera server this summer. We completed some ADA site work at Moore Middle School, Portland High School, and King this summer. At Talbot, we did some ADA cabinet work and some bathroom ADA project that we finished this summer. And we did some paving work at Presumpscot back parking lot and Deering pathway for being so that the buses don't have to pull into the Deering parking lot to drop off. They're dropping off at Ludlow. So we created a pathway to the ADA ramp at Deering. A couple of the projects we have in the construction phase right now are East End and Talbot cameras. Currently, East End and Talbot have no cameras on site. So we're doing interior and exterior cameras. And Portland High School facade. If anybody's drove by lately at Portland High School, you'll see some scaffolding, and there'll be more put up for them to start working on that here in the next week or so. And we've come a long way with some of the design work with some of the HVAC projects we have going on right now. So that's just some of the progress we've made on the projects that we currently have. So any questions on that, or should I just keep going? Keep going. Oh.
Board Member Lena, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. With the facade work at Portland High School, is that a safety issue?
That's the reason for the scaffolding, because there were pieces coming down in the last year or so from the facade. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now I think we can move on. Yeah.
So I just wanted to explain a little bit about how the CIP process works with working with the city. So the city's procurement process can be quite extensive, and it is quite time consuming, all the different phases we have to go through to get to even go to bid. So it starts out with the process, evaluate. Well, first of all, it starts out with working with the city on getting the project, a project number, getting a design or engineering firm that's approved by the city, getting a proposal from them, taking that proposal, sending it to the city, getting a PO issued for that. Once the design work is done, then it goes to the procurement. Procurement takes it, creates a bid package and sends it out to bid. Then after that, the bids come back. We evaluate the bids, negotiate the contract. And so each one of those steps can take, for example, project we started in February for the boiler at the greenhouse at Paths. We are just finished the contract last week to actually start the construction of the boiler. So it could take almost a year before we go through the whole process. So that's why there's various stages that we try to keep with the city at all times in, different phases so that we can keep it moving through the projects that we have bonded. We also, as a facility management team, have other priorities in regards to operations. So Scott and I are, also handle custodial services and maintenance services with the schools on top of, working on projects. So there's a limited staff. We do our best to prioritize the safety and security issues with the projects that we have bonded. So we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So this is some of how the financial impact is. So approved capital requests are bonded by the city, but we are responsible for paying our portion of the loan principal and interest as it accrues. And these are, as you saw from the financials that Helene showed a couple slides ago, it's included. The interest and principals related to any PPS capital requests are in the budget as debt services. For example, if we had a new request for $1 million capital project, assuming it had a 20-year lifespan, it would add approximately 1 cent to the PPS portion of the mill rate for the next 20 years at 4% interest. Now, any more details on that, Helene will probably have to jump in because that's her expertise. Any questions on how we repay interest and principal?
Not specifically about that, but you did make me think of a related question. So the capital improvements requests go through the process you just described. I'm wondering if you could talk a few sentences about whether there's anything on the list that might be sort of like a small ticket item. Is there a possibility to take some items out of the CIP universe and just budget for them and not bond for them? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. In regards to projects we already have bonded, so I don't know from a financial impact how that works. If they're already bonded through the city, I am not sure. Helene, do you know anything more on that?
Yeah, from my past experience, what would happen is we would have to look at the language that the city used in order to bond our projects. If they used more general language in regards to what we were bonding and not very specific to what the projects were, then yeah, maybe we might have a possibility to move things around. We would have to look at, like I said, it's called the there's a whole big pamphlet that comes together when you bond, and in it you state to the bank basically what you plan on using the money with. And again, it would depend on what the verbiage says that may or may not give us the ability to maybe switch out projects. Yeah, I know that Brendan, the finance director, has worked with me on projects we already have bonded. If we needed to move money from one to another, he has the ability to do that to a certain dollar amount. But I don't know about removing it totally and not having that debt service. I'm not sure about that.
Okay. And in the other direction, if there was something that was, I'm not thinking of anything in particular, I'm purely theoretical, if there was something for $25,000 and there was a feeling that it was urgently needed, is it possible to just move that into the regular budget? Or do capital improvements have to go through this bonding process is what I'm asking.
I would suggest that anything that would fall into like a $25,000 range would be better off to be put into the operating budget rather than in a bond.
Okay.
Because you want to look at really bigger ticket items that you like. Tamara has here, where it says you want to think about things that have a useful life of that's going to be 20 years, because basically that's how long it's going to take to pay down that bond.
Okay. So like the spreadsheet that Tamara alluded to in board docs, there's like the smallest dollar amount that I'm seeing is $30,000 for gates for a fence. And so it sounds like that's something that's decades worth, useful life is quite long. So it sounds like that could go either way. That could go through this bonding process, or it could go through our operations budget, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
I think we're ready for the next slide, Helene. Yeah. Okay, so we have built buckets of projects in regards to safe, warm, and dry. That's our overall theme, like we did last year. We're sticking to that theme, and our first area is going to be the building envelope, which consists of the whole building, meaning the roof, the windows, the walls, the foundation. That would be considered the building envelope. So in regards to the building envelope, we have some roof replacements that are desperately needed. At Casco Bay, there's a small roof over the front entrance that has at least 50 patches on it, and the insulation is currently wet. At Longfellow, there's a couple parts of the roof that are in good condition, but the small uppermost roof and the left side is in very poor condition with ponding water, and it's very spongy up there. At Presumpscot, there's a couple areas at Presumpscot on the roof that are okay, but the front office and the pitch roof are in good condition. The remainder is in poor condition with multiple patches upon patches. Now, this does not include the new wing. The new wing, had a new roof. So this was the existing building before we added on to it that I'm talking about. And then at Reiki, the two white roofs are in good condition, but the remainder of the roof is in poor condition. Some parts of the roof have delaminated, meaning that the roof has come apart from the insulation. So those three schools just got finished with the BFOF, or we're finishing up the BFOF remodel. So we would really like to protect, all the work that we put into the interior of the building by replacing these roofs. We can stop there if you have a question.
Yeah, I do have a question. So thank you for explaining that. I agree. That's such a good goal to protect the work that went into those buildings and not let it deteriorate. I'm curious about why the roofs were not addressed during the Buildings for Our Future projects.
So I've been here, 2 years and 4 months.
Yeah.
So I came in the middle of those projects,
Yeah.
but from my understanding, that they were mainly focusing on the interior of those schools when they did the BFOF projects, addressing student needs. From all I can see from all the projects we did, they really didn't address any of the building envelope.
Okay. I am not in any way, trying to say, Tamara, why didn't you do that's not. Yeah.
No, it's important. The building envelope is super important to the build. If you don't have a good building envelope, it really doesn't matter what's inside the building,
Right. As a community, we just spent so much money on those schools that it's frustrating and confusing to see another million here. So, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions? Board Chair Lentz, go ahead.
Just kind of echoing your thoughts, Sarah. I think I was just surprised to see this and just feeling some disappointment. But again, Tamara, not at you, just in general. And I was just wondering if you could speak to any inside effect that these issues are having currently, or is it still on the envelope of the building, or is it coming into the letter?
Well, I know at Longfellow, sometimes we have some water seepage, and that's another reason why last year we asked for Longfellow masonry work, which I'm in the process of with design and engineering of that right now to work on the masonry. You know, roof leaks we address roof leaks as we can. We will patch them. We will, do our best. I'm sure there's a little bit of, damage getting done sometimes in the ceilings and stuff, but yeah, we address it as it comes.
Yeah. Board Member Opperman, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
My moved position. So, I will say about the Longfellow, I was their day in the classrooms, the day they were moving them back into the original classrooms, and the roof was leaking. That was a year or so ago, and it was a big concern at that point. And they were just trying to deal with molding on that. So I had a question a little bit older, if that's possible, or maybe it's kind of in this as well. And it has to do with on the list of things on the spreadsheet that is not posted, but it's not on the slides, but it was posted. There are different projects that are different stages, and it says when they were assigned and when they were granted. I wondered when, things take time to get done, as you were talking about with the city, what if it's possible at another time to get an estimated completion on those, because it says if they're in construction and I know there were different divisions, but it wasn't quite sure, and I just didn't know if it would be possible to find out, is it going to happen this spring, or is it going to happen, next fall, and it's because you have only limited support and personnel to do it. So that is my question.
Yeah, I can definitely work on providing that. Some of it has to do with timing and school, like some things you can't do while school's in session. You have to work into breaks, or you have to do in the summer. And sometimes the capacity in the summer with general contractors is, there's only so many general contractors that can do the work. That's also part of our challenge, is timing. But yes, I can work on that.
At any point that, the board can help in that, facilitate, I don't know, beyond what all of you do work hard to get done, don't hesitate to say something.
Thank you.
Other questions? I'm not seeing any other questions, so let's go. Yeah.
I think we have another page to the billing envelope, so yes. So we have Lincoln Middle School window replacement. It's one of the ones that wasn't on the original 4 schools that I'm working on currently that need window replacements, but Lincoln is in desperate need of the front part of the building where it was the original building. Those are original windows. Definitely lots of leaks coming through, not very energy efficient. And for Deering High School, last year you guys approved phase 1 of my masonry repairs. I'm looking for a second phase, as that is a very large building and there is much masonry and tuck pointing that needs to be done. That's like priority 2. The first 5 were like priority 1. That's priority 2. We have King Middle School. This came off the facility assessment from 7 years ago. Replacing the glass block with the storefront on the back egress steps of the building. The storefront, when it's all thermally broken, that means the glass isn't being efficient and air is just coming through. Yeah. So that's a third priority compared to the other 5 or 6. So
I will just quickly voice my appreciation, as I have it. I think the last time we did this, I was the person who was chiming in to say, "Can we do things energy efficient?" So I appreciate you looking for ways to optimize that. I really appreciate that, because I think it's a great investment in the long term in terms of what our district-wide expenses will be. Looking years down the road. Board Member Opperman, is your hand up from your last question, or did you have another one? Okay, super. Onward.
Okay. The next group is HVAC proposals. So the first one is for Casco Bay High School and paths. This one came from our city partners, HVAC city partners, and I'm being told that one of the heating and ventilation units on the roof is past its useful life and no parts are being supported by the manufacturer anymore. So meaning if it breaks down and it needs a part, then we have no ability to fix it. So that is a priority one. Central kitchen, this also came from the facility assessment from 7 years ago, replacing the gas-fired unit heaters. They're also at the end of their useful life and should be replaced with new horizontal condensed gas-fired units. District office. There's an HVAC unit that supplies the multilingual department, and it has antiquated R22 refrigerant, which the U.S. no longer imports or produces as of 2020. So if a repair was needed on this unit, they also would not be able to refill that refrigerant to repair it. So.
Oh, sorry. Can I ask a super quick? I hope it's a super quick question. So for the central kitchen, that's heaters like heating the space, not cooking,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, heating the space. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Moore Middle School Lyseth. I don't know if you all know, but Moore Middle School's boilers support Lyseth for heating and stuff. I didn't know if you knew that there's like pipes that run underneath the ground, but yeah. So HVAC, this also came from the facility assessment, replacing original to building univents and automatic temperature controls. So the univents are original to the building, and so is the automatic temperature control, and they're looking for an upgrade. Big price tag on that priority.
And that's been an issue since 2017?
It was on the assessment to be done within the first 1 to 5 years.
That the assessment that happened in 2017?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Ocean Avenue. This also came, this was new to me. I had not heard about this prior to putting this capital together, but this came from our city partners that apparently when Ocean Avenue was built 13 or 14 years ago, that there was solar installed to handle the hot water needed in the summer for like cleaning and stuff like that. In the winter, it's handled by the boilers. But apparently they never commissioned the domestic water solar to be able to supply hot water in the summer. So the suggestion is to just install a hot water tank at this point.
Is the building used in the summer?
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah, our custodial staff is there all summer. They
Okay.
also have, I don't know if Ocean, I think Ocean has summer programming and stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the way it's gone now is they run the boiler even in the summer to supply the hot water. It's not energy efficient to do that.
Yep. Yep.
Any questions on those two? Okay, move on to safety and security proposals. So during high school, on the back side of the building where everybody enters, there's an ADA entrance, and it's currently is not a secure vestibule. It's requiring the ADA door to be open too long to the public. It really needs to be looked at from a design and security engineering standpoint and figure out what is the best way we can secure that whole section in the backside. Because currently, that's the only way for any of our ADA students to be able to enter the building. And also the office isn't down there at the, they're on the front side. I don't know if you're all familiar with how the building is designed. I just feel like we need to look at a way to secure that entrance.
So sorry, for this line item, is it that the current back of the school entrance needs to be changed so that it functions better, or the front of the building needs an additional ADA accessible entrance, or both?
I think we need to have somebody look at it.
Okay.
Figure out the best way.
Okay.
I feel like with the parking lot in the back, you really need to make that a good, secure entrance on the back side of the building.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
But I think we need to have somebody look at it.
Yep. Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
Thank you. Tamara, in looking at the back entrance, I know in relationship to that whole back side of the building, from the student parking lot all the way over, I don't know what our camera situation is there, and whether what you have here fits along that same evaluation or design issue. I know, having interacted with Longfellow School, that there are places that are blind spots between the two schools, and for a general, not just a secure getting into the building, but being secure around the building is a question. And I didn't know if any of that had been considered in looking at this line item.
Deering has pretty good exterior cameras that cover most of that whole back area. But certainly, if Deering needed more cameras, we could look at that in our operations, with our operations budget. Does that answer you?
Thank you.
Okay. So then for Portland High School, we need to install some more exterior lighting. It's very, very dark around the school at night. And we need to install some wall packs, some more light poles all around the building to make sure that we light it up and make it secure for students and staff leaving the building after dark. And then for Reiki, the city is going to be installing a new playground this coming summer. And the ask was if we wanted to have the current fencing be gated in rather than currently what we're doing with like a chain across it with a sign, which isn't, aesthetically pleasing, and the city would like I think the school and the city would like it to be more with a gate on it, on each of the entrances, rather than just have an open space for people to come through. That's what the ask was from the city.
So if I understand correctly, that last item is not a safety concern.
I would say Reiki school, yes, they would consider it a safety concern. The concern is of people coming onto the playground while kids are out playing from around the neighborhoods. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
Thank you again. Again, in the similar situation of looking at the Longfellow playground, and the city has made a small change to kind of to do a little bit more protection with the Stevens Avenue, but in reviewing that with the city and with the principal at Longfellow, there are comparable issues. Has that ever come up before you in evaluating, gates and fencing around the playground and access, say, on the backside of Longfellow, which is the backside of, again, backside of Deering, the easy accessibility for that space. Has that ever been presented to you? I don't know.
So the fencing itself and stuff should all be part of the city. I think this was a compromise that we would take on the gating up the fences that they currently have. Yes, it has been brought up with the principal, and when I've worked with the design team for the Longfellow playground also. It doesn't seem like they have the budget to install fencing unless more headways come for Longfellow. I'm not aware.
Okay, but that would be a city issue. It's city financing and implementation. I know they're behind in that Longfellow was supposed to get a new playground this year. And then because of the staffing issues at the city changeover and all that didn't happen. And as I was told would be happening this spring. So let's, if there's an issue with that, let me know, okay? Because I've been talking to the guys over at the city.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, Longfellow and Reiki are both supposed to go under construction spring, summer of this coming year. Yes.
Okay. Thanks, dear.
So I have a follow-up question on tying back to that last bit of conversation. If I heard you correctly, Tamara, generally speaking, the fencing and the gating would be a city cost?
My understanding is they installed the fence. It's theirs to maintain. Yes.
Okay.
But in fact, I think over at, and you can correct me, Maya, at Row, it is the PTO that put in the fencing. So, the exact nature, or at least they paid for the fencing. The city would have installed it, I believe, but I believe that the PTO paid for it. So it's kind of good, Sarah will explain this. I'll let you do that.
I don't know if I can explain it all, but it does vary a little bit by location and purpose. And the fence that was added at Row was put in at the request of the school, and wasn't initially thought to be, part of that design. But then the school was experiencing some challenges with sort of management of little ones at recess time, and the fence has, as I understand it from the school leadership, made a really big difference, particularly in managing pre-K kiddos when they're out there. It's almost like playing zone defense with a basketball team as opposed to man-to-man. So that was its own particular situation. Reiki has been a huge project with a lot of back and forth between us and the city, and kind of negotiation around building in a pre-K component to the playground. So I think each one has had its own sort of unique set of circumstances that have evolved in the way they have. I mean, if we think that there are things that the city needs to be adding, we should probably be quickly advocating for them to add it into their CIP, because they've already been working on that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Warren, for that explanation. I don't know if it's realistic or feasible, but I'm just feeling like it would be great to have more structure around, playgrounds are city and, X is school district. The sort of, sometimes is a little tricky to navigate. Again, I don't know how really.
I think in general, it is fairly clear that playgrounds are the city. The one area that's been a little bit squishy is the pre-K playgrounds. And those are some of the things we're trying to work out right now as we negotiate an MOU with them, and trying to nail that down. I think fences have sort of been a little bit different, depending on the situation. But in general, that we all have clarity that they are responsible for building and maintaining playgrounds.
Okay. And if I'm understanding you correctly, some of the muddiness might come in if there's a difference of opinion in terms of what the need is. Is that correct? in terms of like what purpose the fence is serving and whether it's necessary and that sort of thing, or?
It's evolved a little bit differently and different. So like Row, things got constructed in a certain way based on community input at the time of the design and construction project. I wasn't here at the time, so I don't even know all the ins and outs of that. And it was later that the school felt like the particular fence that needed to be added was, something they advocated for based on experience. Longfellow, I think Tamara and Dr. Opperman are probably better equipped to speak to that one because they've been more heavily involved in it. And I just know that Reiki, they involve their design people, and they're not always thinking in terms of a physical fence. Sometimes they would prefer to use landscaping. So those are the kinds of things we work through. The actual playground itself is built according to, I think, relatively standard designs or, design principles, but fences may be a little different. It's something we can take up with them.
Okay, thank you.
Are we good then? Okay.
Yep.
And then these two areas fell into the other bucket, didn't really fall into any of those other ones. So we have numerous schools that need their driveways and parking lots milled and repaved. For example, the drive access at Lyman Moore and Lyseth, the front parking lot at Presumpscot. So those are just a couple examples that I just put in a bucket of money to work on some driveways and parking lots. And then at Talbot, the gym is a shared space that we share with the city and us. And they have put into their capital plan to replace the gym floor, and they have asked that I put in to replace the bleachers at the same time. The bleachers are the old bleachers that you pull out, heavy, hard to pull out, and kind of a safety issue for staff that are pulling them out. And so we put that into the capital proposal to share in some of that cost.
I have a follow-up question about that. Would that primarily benefit the city? I'm not confident so my understanding is that when there's a big event at Talbot, it would be another part of the building where all the kiddos would be. I could be wrong about that. I'm just thinking of how the gym space is used and whether the Talbot community would get a lot of benefit out of the new bleachers.
Probably not the bleachers, but the gym floor. So that's why it was a shared, So we're not paying for the gym floor.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, that's just, yeah. You might look at it differently than I do, but that's how I'm looking at it. But
so it's a shared space. I'm not sure if anybody in this conversation has the answer to this, but if not, we can get the information another day. When the city uses that space, are they paying us for it, or?
So we are in the process of working through an MOU right now with the city that will account for some shared costs in some of that. Yes.
Okay.
Currently, no, they are not.
Okay. I'm in that room often for basketball games. So. Thank you for that clarification, and looking forward to hearing more about the MOU as it moves forward. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Board Chair Lentz, go ahead.
Overall, just thank you so much for managing all of these projects. I just think that the sense I get of your team is you're just constantly in motion and moving things forward. So thank you for that. And I was just wondering if you could speak to how, because I think we still have a couple of other ADA projects that haven't gotten on the list yet. And so could you speak to how you prioritize the ones that are on the list versus the ones that aren't? And then a second part to that question is the remaining ADA projects, are they, like, once we get through those, are we going to be ADA compliant across the board, or will we then probably have another batch of things that come up, or just kind of like, where are we in terms of ADA compliance overall?
So a few years ago, they tried to bundle all the ADA projects together and go out to bid, and they were not successful. So we backed off on that. And so each year because usually you have to do them in the summer if they're impacting inside the school building. So last summer I did Talbot. Right currently I'm working on paths, some bathroom ADA work in the design phase. We have to we have to go back to the city and get new permitting. I'm hopeful we'll be at the process, at the point where we can do it this summer. And so I'm trying to continue to move things forward as time allows, really, and general contractors allow, without overloading the general contractor pool and not get any bids. That's my concern. I'm trying to slowly, move those forward to make sure that we can get the ones done that we have in the process. And even after we go through all the ones that are bonded, I feel like there's probably a need for another look at everything, and there's more ADA work to be done. Sure. Yeah.
Can I ask a process question? I'm curious about, first of all, just take a step back. Thank you. This is just such good information. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your patience with this barrage of questions that we've had for you. I really appreciate what you're bringing to this conversation. So my question has to do with, as committee members, as we all sort of digest what we've just heard and learned about, I know that in the January meeting, the intent is to vote on whether to move this forward. I'm interested in better understanding whether, if there are adjustments that the committee would like to make, would that happen in January?
That's a good question. I do not know. I don't know what the process should look like. I think maybe we should bring it. I don't know if it should be another conversation before the January, so that, you're able to look at the actual approved projects. I'm not sure what that looks like from a process standpoint, but.
Board Member Lena, I see you. I'm just going to ask a follow-up question to that. So, Tamara, that level of detail that you just mentioned in terms of approved projects, is that in the spreadsheet that's in Board Docs?
I'm sorry, the proposed projects here that I presented.
Yeah.
What do we want to move forward to be approved, I guess, is what I meant. And
right.
So,
okay.
I don't know if you have feedback, if you want to give feedback via email. I'm not sure how.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm thinking it would make sense to have that be a public conversation within a meeting setting. And if it makes sense to maybe gather committee members' initial gut reactions, for example, focusing on priority 1 and moving off priority 2s and priority 3s, things like that, like blanket statements and gut reactions. Would that be helpful to you, Tamara, to gather today? Okay, yeah. Super. All right. So while we're all thinking about that, Board Member Lena, go ahead.
Thank you. This is a process question. I'm wondering, in the January meeting, will we be going item by item to approve them, or the whole proposal as a whole?
Can I jump in here just on two pieces? So, Chair Biden, I think to your question around what would be helpful right now, the high-level feedback is really helpful. So one of the things that's on the table is last year's SIP proposal was between $3 and $4 million. I don't have the exact dollar in front of me. This is about $1 million, a little bit more, higher. And so one would be feedback on that. The second would be around what we already heard was feedback around a preference to put in operating some of the potential smaller costs to lower this. And so we could look at lowering the overall by using our operating budget. Just know that there's the trade-off on that side. And then at the next committee meeting, committee members would certainly have the ability to make amendments or proposals to adjust this. That could be by individual project. And so it does allow for that. But if there were things where you said to, I think what Chair Lentz's question was a little while ago, if there was a bigger ask, for example, reprioritizing ADA projects, we would want to be able to hear that tonight to be able to follow up at the next meeting with information. Otherwise, I think we'll be in a spot where we won't be able to provide you all of the detailed information of what those projects would be.
That's helpful. Thank you. Other questions? Okay, so I would look to each committee member and also Board Chair Lentz, if you feel moved to do so. I would be looking for any high-level feedback, gut reactions that has not already been voiced, or if you wanted to amplify something that's already been voiced and sort of reiterate. To start, I will say I would be inclined to sort of to reiterate. I would favor pulling out some of the smaller ticket items and putting them in the operational budget rather than bonding them. I support, as we all know, I support investments in increasing sustainability and efficiency as we move forward. I support investments in making sure that the envelopes of our buildings are protecting the investments we've made inside them. And the other high-level overarching concept that I want to voice support for is focusing on priority one items. Are there other folks that want to make any other points? Okay. Again, Tamara, thank you so much for your,
Sorry.
Board Chair Lentz, go ahead.
Sorry, just quick, slow on the hand button. I know I don't vote on this committee, but I do agree with the prioritization of the envelopes and the safe, warm, and dry kind of lens that we're looking at this for, especially the roofs, because I just think that roof damage often leads to just more and more damage and, you know, mold and all kinds of things. So if there are those issues, that really feels important to uphold within this batch. It does, you know, it was really helpful to hear you talk through kind of the challenges that we have with ADA compliance projects. But I would invite us to just think about how could we be prioritizing those more, because it just really, you know, not just for our students with disabilities, but our families, it really does set a tone when people can get into the building easily and access what's there. So I would really like to see us figuring out how to get those in and done at a faster clip if possible.
Yeah, and I would just one last time express my gratitude and appreciation, Tamara. The other thing I didn't say when I last thanked you was I want to acknowledge that I don't do this work. This is not my life's work. So thank you so much for your patience with all these what about this? I don't. You're the expert, and I so appreciate your patience. Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm a little slow on the uptake tonight, figuring out what is and isn't for various reasons. And Tamara, I just was wondering at some point if it's possible to ask you for some of the lists of ADA ones that you've kind of put on hold or are kind of pacing out to see if, again, there might be a trade-off on those. I don't know. I'm just at this point not prepared to say much more than, yes, I agree with the envelope. I mean, I just saw that water coming in at Longfellow was very disappointing. And there are ADA issues that we could deal with, or maybe the city can deal with, that might be important to think about. And just I agree with a high level, but maybe more directive, I guess, is what I'm thinking about in my comments. And that is I have a a very, very bad head cold. So the oxygen level is limited and I apologize.
Are you looking for adding ADA projects, or are you looking for the ones we currently have bonded?
Well, I'd like to know where the ones we have bonded, how far they are along, kind of like what I was saying with the other spreadsheet items of where they stand. And, because I do remember last year when you presented, it was like, this one was the hin here, and it's, and yes, they do move on different stages of the design, et cetera, but, how have any been delayed because of engineering issues? That piece, but in that piece, of the ADA ones, I mean, which are all ADA is priority, but which might impact students the most, I guess. That's as clear as I can be. I'm sorry.
Take that.
Helene, do you have your hand up to
Yeah.
add?
I was just going to.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to remind the committee that, Tamara does a great job of trying to balance what she's also wanting to bring forward things that she believes that she's going to be able to get moved forward. Because remember, whatever she can't move forward, as much as we want it, and we're at this point, if we put something on the list and we finance it, and she's not able to find a vendor or contractor to move forward with that project, that money's just going to sit there, and we're going to just be paying interest on something that will not get accomplished. So, we want to just keep in mind to the committee that, Tamara's also trying to balance what she believes that she can get moved forward as far as getting things accomplished.
Good point. Very good point.
Thank you. Okay, what a big conversation. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Chair, if it's all right, if I can just run through the last slide and then
Perfect.
the one additional piece. So Tamara's work, it's huge, it's ongoing, and the conversation tonight was the start of our SIP process with you. What you can see on the slide is what happens moving forward. So we're estimating and moving towards a vote of this committee on January 13th, which is the next meeting. We would have a first read on the recommended projects with the overall board on January 21st and a vote to approve at the first meeting in February. And then city council, they have started, the city staff have started their review, but we don't expect a council vote until March. Last year, it happened during our budget process with them, and we anticipate it being about that same time.
Great, super, thank you.
And then if you'll give me 1 minute, I just want to pull this down, and I have a quick update on the conversation from our last meeting. So this is a very quick just update just to make sure that we're following up on what was discussed at the last meeting. And so at the last meeting, we asked the committee to identify any areas that they would like further exploration before a final or a superintendent proposed budget goes forward. And so the topics you see in January and in February were the 7 that were raised at that time, and we've grouped them, where the February meetings really focused on all of the pieces that go to targeted support and intervention. So from summer school and after school to volunteer corps to expanding Make It Happen. The top one in the January is sort of those other pieces. So that's how we group them. And then I had the opportunity to just follow up with board members, recognizing that committees have changed and we have new board members. And so there were 2 additional topics that were raised. And so we're going to try to squeeze it into the January, February window, but holding time as well in March for the 2 additional topics. We picture these as 20 to 30 minute updates that we would share with the committee on what it would mean and what's possible, both from a programmatic end as well as a budget end. In some cases, these overlap with pretty significant initiatives that are named in the strategic plan, and in some cases they're new. And so if it's fine with you, Chair, and with the other members of the committee, this is the schedule on which we're planning to follow up.
Yes, that looks great. Thank you for putting that together and letting us know. I'll look for Zoom hands if there's any concern with that. Okay. Super. Wonderful. We are at the end of our agenda. 7:27, 3 minutes to spare. Amazing. So I will look for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Board Member Lena. And a second. Board Member Opperman, thank you so much. Okay, and show of hands voting to adjourn. Wonderful. Thank you so much. It is 7:27. We are adjourned. I appreciate the great conversation, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening. Thank you.